Hey everyone, and welcome back. It's December 6th, 2024,
Oh, wow.
and I know a lot of you are probably out there enjoying this snowy Tuesday,
Yeah.
but over in Finland, they're celebrating something pretty major.
Mm-hmm.
It's their Independence Day.
Right.
So to mark the occasion, we're doing a deep dive today into a blog post.
Okay.
It's got a really intriguing title,
Right.
even if it is a little bit of a mouthful.
What is it?
Hayatuscuplia. It's Senesi Iden Muista Päivää.
Wow. Yeah, that is a mouthful.
I know, right?
I'm going to need a translation on that one.
Oh, it translates to scattered bubbles. Independence Day.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
I know, right? It really sets the stage for something pretty thought-provoking.
Mm-hmm.
And trust me, it delivers.
Okay.
Our author today is Jukka.
Jukka.
Yeah, he's quite the character.
Okay.
He describes himself as a retired farmer,
Oh, wow.
a programmer,
Interesting.
and an anarchist in the original sense.
Wow, the guy's wearing a lot of hats.
He really has.
So what's he saying in this post?
Well, he uses this post to really challenge some conventional ideas about Finnish independence.
Okay.
He's arguing that it might be more of an illusion than reality.
An illusion, huh? How so?
Well, he doesn't hold back. He points fingers at organizations
Like who?
like the EU, NATO,
Okay.
the World Economic Forum,
Right.
even the World Health Organization.
The WHO.
Yeah, he thinks they all exert way too much influence on Finnish affairs.
Interesting. So he sees them as undermining Finland's independence.
Exactly. He even goes so far as to suggest that when it comes to issues like Russia,
Oh, boy.
Finland's basically taking orders from these global players.
That's a pretty bold statement.
It is, especially when you think about Finland's history and,
Right, being right next to Russia.
Exactly. What do you think about that? I mean, does being part of like the EU or NATO, does that inherently like compromise a nation's independence?
That's a great question, and it's a tough one.
Yeah.
I think it really depends on how you define independence in the 21st century.
Right, because things are so different now. They really are.
Yeah.
On one hand, being a member of these organizations definitely means you have to follow certain rules
Sure.
and collaborate on making decisions together.
Yeah, so for example, Finland's a member of the EU.
Right.
And that means they're obligated to implement those EU directives.
You know those things about agricultural practices?
Right, or environmental regulations.
All that stuff.
And those directives can have a real impact on Finnish farmers.
Like Jukka.
Exactly, like Jukka. So you can see why he might be a little skeptical.
So it's not just some abstract concept. It's influencing their daily lives.
Absolutely. And then there's NATO.
Okay.
When you join NATO, it means you're integrating into this big collective defense structure.
Right.
Which inherently means you have to give up some control over your own individual defense decisions.
Right.
So for Finland, given their history with Russia, this might be a trade-off they're willing to make.
Sure.
But it still raises questions about how much autonomy a nation really keeps when they join alliances like that.
Jukka also seems super concerned about the World Economic Forum.
The WEF?
Yeah. You know those Davos meetings?
Oh, yeah, the ones with all the world leaders and billionaires
That's the one.
hanging out in the Swiss Alps.
Exactly. Jukka seems to think they're shaping political discourse.
Not just in Finland, but globally.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about whether it's a truly nefarious influence or just a bunch of powerful people discussing global issues.
Right.
But either way, they definitely have a big impact on policy decisions.
For sure.
But for instance, their initiatives on things like climate change
Right.
or digital currencies, those often end up trickling down into national policies.
Okay. So we've got the EU impacting daily life, NATO influencing defense, and the WEF potentially shaping political discourse.
Right.
Is there anywhere Jukka doesn't see these external forces at play?
Well, he brings up the World Health Organization, too.
The WHO?
Yeah.
What does he say about them?
He kind of implies that they could have a bigger role in the Finnish healthcare system soon.
And this is especially relevant considering the debates around,
The WHO's handling of recent pandemic.
Exactly. It's something that resonates with a lot of people globally.
For sure. The idea of an international organization having a say in how a nation manages its healthcare.
Right.
It can feel like a loss of control for some.
Yeah, it definitely can.
Right.
So Jukka is painting this picture of Finland being pulled in a ton of different directions by these global forces.
A lot of different forces.
But here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
He contrasts this with Finland's reputation as this utopia,
Right.
the country that always tops those happiness rankings.
Yeah, with the incredible education system.
Exactly.
It's always praised for its strong democracy.
Exactly. Makes you wonder if there's something more going on beneath the surface.
Right. What's lurking beneath this picture-perfect image?
That's exactly the paradox Juka's highlighting.
It's a good point.
Because while those positive things about Finland are real,
Mm-hmm.
they don't tell the whole story.
No, they...
Juka even mentions things like
What kinds of things?
breadlines and pockets of despair.
Wow.
Things that you might overlook if you just focus on those broad happiness indicators.
Yeah. I mean, it's a reminder that even in societies considered successful, there are always complexities and challenges that statistics might not capture.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
He even compares the Finnish media
To what?
to the Word of God.
Wow, so he's a little skeptical.
He is. He's suggesting a certain level of skepticism towards the information they're putting out.
That's interesting.
Do you think that's fair?
Well, it's definitely a provocative statement.
It is.
Whether you agree with him or not, it raises a really important question about
What's that?
the role of media in shaping how we see the world.
And how we see reality.
Exactly.
So if we really take Juka's point to heart,
yeah.
it makes you wonder, are there biases
Or blind spots.
in how the Finnish media is portraying their country?
It's a good question.
And are there voices or perspectives that are being left out?
Right, that are being excluded from the dominant narrative.
This leads us to another fascinating point Juka raises.
Okay, what's that?
This idea that Finnish society itself has gone through a major shift over time.
Oh, interesting.
He suggests that Finland's moved away from a more unified conformist society that was really rooted in what he calls Christian values.
Okay.
And it's become more individualistic.
Embracing freedom of expression.
Exactly.
It's almost like he's drawing a parallel between Finland's journey as a nation and the individual journeys that Finnish citizens are going on.
I see that.
Like he's asking, has this shift towards individualism come at a cost?
Right. Because on the surface, it seems positive.
It does.
But has it eroded that sense of, like,
Collective identity.
or a shared purpose?
That's a really thought-provoking question.
It is, especially when we think about all of Juka's concerns about these external influences.
Right. Could this shift towards individualism actually make Finland even more susceptible to those external forces?
That's what he's getting at.
If people are so focused on their individual freedoms, are they less likely to come together and resist pressure from outside?
It's a complex issue.
It really is.
And Juke is definitely hinting at some potential trade-offs that are involved in this societal evolution.
Yeah, he seems to be saying that individual freedom is important,
Of course.
but it has to be balanced with...
A sense of the collective good.
Right, and maybe even a shared understanding of what it means to be Finnish in this globalized world.
And that brings us to another super important point that Juka makes.
I'm hooked. What is it?
The power of language.
You okay?
And how the meaning of words is becoming so subjective.
Right.
He argues that this subjectivity is leading to these communication breakdowns.
Yeah, where people can't understand each other.
Right. And it's making it tough to have productive discussions about
important issues.
like independence.
Which is what we're talking about.
Exactly. He even says that this shift in language is making it harder to even define what words like
what?
freedom, independence truly mean.
Interesting. So, what might feel like freedom to one person? Like the freedom to make their own choices?
Right.
That might feel like a threat to national independence to somebody else.
So how do we even begin to have a conversation about this stuff when we can't even agree on what the words mean?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is.
It's something we see all the time, not just in Finland, but everywhere.
Globally.
People use the same words.
But they interpret them so differently.
Yeah.
And it just leads to more misunderstanding and division.
It's like we're all speaking different languages, even when we're using the same words.
It's a problem for sure, and it's something Juka's really keyed into.
Yeah.
He even says that this subjectivity in language is part of what's fueling the circus of the world, as he calls it.
It's a circus, huh?
It's a pretty apt metaphor.
It is. It's a circus we're all a part of, whether we want to be or not.
So the question is, how do we navigate this world?
With all these shifting meanings and competing narratives.
Right. Where do we find meaning and control when the very language we're using to understand the world is in flux?
Juka doesn't claim to have all the answers.
No?
But his personal journey gives us some interesting insights.
What do you mean?
He mentioned spending over a decade exploring
Exploring what?
psychology, propaganda, politics, philosophy.
Oh, wow. So like a deep dive into the human condition.
It sounds like he was searching for a way to make sense of the world,
Yep.
to understand the forces that shape our thoughts and our beliefs.
And what did he find?
Well, after all that exploration,
Yeah.
he decides to focus on personal growth
Instead of
trying to change that circus of the world
So what do you think that says about his view on individual agency?
versus the power of those external forces.
Right. Has he just given up on trying to change the world around him?
That's a great question, and one that takes us into the next part of Juka's argument. But
Okay.
before we go there, let's take a minute to think about what we've learned so far. So Juka's presented a pretty thought-provoking critique of Finnish independence. He's highlighted the influence of these global organizations,
Right.
the potential blind spots in media narratives, and the shifting social landscape within Finland itself.
And he's done it all while raising some fundamental questions
About how we define things like independence and freedom.
in a world where meaning is constantly changing.
It's a lot to think about.
It really is.
Yeah.
But what I find most compelling
Yeah.
is that he doesn't just leave us hanging with all these complex questions.
What do you mean?
He gives us a glimpse into his own personal journey
Right.
and suggests that maybe the answer lies not in trying to change the world around us,
Okay.
but in focusing on our own personal growth and understanding.
Interesting.
But what does that really mean?
Yeah.
We'll explore that
And one.
when we come back for part 2 of this deep dive.
Can't wait.
I'm looking forward to it too.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting, isn't it?
It is.
You'd think someone who spends a decade like that, immersed in these big topics, that they'd come out with a grand plan to fix the world.
Yeah, you'd think so.
But Juka seems to have reached a different conclusion.
What's that?
He's not saying he has all the answers or anything,
Right.
but his decision to put personal growth first,
Yeah.
it suggests he sees that as like a powerful action in and of itself.
So instead of getting caught up in that circus,
Right.
he's choosing to focus on understanding himself and his place in the world.
It's like he's saying, I can't control everything, but I can control how I respond to things.
Does that resonate with you at all?
Absolutely.
I mean, have you ever felt overwhelmed by like the complexities of the world?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And then found yourself kind of turning inward
Totally.
and finding solace in just focusing on personal development?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people can relate to Juka's perspective, especially these days.
With everything going on.
Yeah, we're constantly bombarded with information and all these conflicting narratives.
It's easy to feel powerless.
It really is,
Yeah.
especially with these huge global challenges.
Yeah, like climate change or political turmoil.
Exactly. Focusing on personal growth can be a way to take back some control.
To feel like you're in charge of something.
Yeah, even if it's just yourself.
Exactly. Even if you can't single-handedly solve these massive problems.
That's a really good point.
It's not about giving up on trying to make a difference.
Right.
It's about recognizing that change usually starts with the individual.
It's like that saying, be the change you want to see in the world.
Exactly.
And Juka's personal journey kind of touches on another important theme in his post.
What's that?
That tension between individual freedom and collective responsibility.
Right. He celebrates that shift towards individualism in Finland. But he also seems to be wrestling with its potential downsides. You mean like how it could erode that shared national identity?
Exactly.
Or the possibility that this individualistic focus
Could make Finland more vulnerable to outside influence.
Right.
It's like he's asking, can we have both?
Can we have our cake and eat it too?
Can we really champion individual freedom and expression, but also keep a strong sense of collective identity and purpose?
It's a tough question.
It really is.
And one that societies all over the world are dealing with.
For sure.
Maybe that's Juka's point,
What do you mean?
that there are no easy answers.
Right.
That maybe the goal isn't to find one perfect solution,
Yeah.
but to just keep having these tough
To
conversations
acknowledge the complexity.
and to keep searching for a balance that works.
And that search for balance is probably going to look different for different people.
And different nations.
And even at different times.
The important thing is that we're asking these questions.
And considering different points of view.
So instead of striving for some perfect utopia of independence or freedom,
Maybe it's about navigating those gray areas.
embracing the messiness of it all.
And acknowledging that the meaning of these concepts, like independence, freedom, even happiness,
Right.
it's not fixed. It's not absolute.
It's constantly changing.
Shaped by individual experiences and cultural context and historical events.
I like that. It's not about arriving at a definitive answer.
Right.
It's about this ongoing process of understanding and adapting.
Exactly. And I think Juka's blog post, even though it has these critiques and challenges,
it ultimately offers a message of hope.
It does. He doesn't shy away from pointing out the problems he sees.
No, he doesn't.
But he also emphasizes the importance of self-reflection.
Right, thinking critically.
And being willing to have meaningful conversations.
Yeah, like we're doing right now.
He seems to believe that even in a world that can feel chaotic, we still have the power to choose how we respond.
How we think.
And how we connect with each other.
I think that's a really powerful message.
Me too.
And one that goes way beyond Finland.
It resonates with everyone.
It really does. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Juka's ideas, let's try to pull out some key takeaways
that we can apply to our own lives.
I think the most important one is this idea that independence,
whether it's for a country or a person, it's not about being isolated or totally self-reliant.
Right.
It's about finding that balance between individual autonomy and our responsibility to each other.
It's about understanding that we exist within these systems and structures
that have an influence on us.
But we also have the power to shape those systems and structures.
Through our actions and our choices and our voices.
And it's about recognizing that the search for meaning and purpose.
It's a journey, not a destination.
It's about being open to asking tough questions and challenging our own assumptions.
And being okay with the complexities of the world.
Without being overwhelmed by them.
Exactly.
It's about finding that balance between
acknowledging the influences
and recognizing our own agency within those influences.
And maybe it's about learning to laugh at that circus of it all.
While still trying to make it a better show.
I love that.
So with that in mind, let's move on to the final part of our deep dive.
All right.
We'll explore some broader implications of Juka's ideas.
I'm ready.
And think about what they mean for us as individuals in this crazy 21st century.
Let's do it.
It's interesting, right?
Yeah.
As we go deeper into Juka's ideas, it really strikes me that his personal journey kind of reflects this broader thing we're seeing in the world today.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
It's this tension between feeling totally overwhelmed by everything.
By like globalization and technology?
Exactly. All the rapid change happening in society.
Right.
And at the same time, wanting a sense of grounding and purpose.
And control.
Control, too. It's a strange paradox.
It is. We're more connected than ever.
Oh.
But so many people just feel isolated and disillusioned.
Like we're at a crossroads.
Trying to figure out how to balance
that allure of individual freedom.
But also needing to act collectively.
And have that shared sense of meaning.
Right.
It seems like Juka's response to all this is to turn inward, focus on personal growth, to navigate it all.
So does that mean we all have to become hermits?
Right. Do we need to retreat from the world?
Is personal growth the opposite of collective action?
That's the question.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I think Juka's choice shows that he understands.
Understands what?
That real change often starts with the individual. It's about self-awareness, critical thinking.
Being willing to challenge your own assumptions.
Exactly. And maybe those are the very skills we need.
To engage with the world.
And make a difference together.
So it's not either.
Right.
Personal growth and collective action.
They can work together.
They can even make each other stronger.
If we're grounded and self-aware, it's easier to see things from other people's perspective.
Build bridges.
Work towards common goals.
Like building a house.
If the foundation is weak,
the whole thing could collapse.
It's the same with our well-being.
Mental, emotional,
spiritual if we don't take care of ourselves.
It's so much harder to contribute to.
Our communities.
The world.
It's that oxygen mask thing. You have to help yourself.
Before you can help anyone else.
Maybe that's what we can learn from Juka.
That taking care of ourselves and growing as people.
It's not selfish.
It's essential.
If we want to engage with the world.
It's also about understanding that everything is connected.
When we grow as individuals.
It affects everything around us.
Our relationships, our communities.
The world.
So back to Juka's question.
What does it mean to be independent in the 21st century?
Maybe it's not about total autonomy.
Or isolation.
But finding that balance.
Where individual growth meets collective well-being.
It's about knowing that true independence.
Doesn't mean going it alone.
But having that inner strength and wisdom.
And compassion.
To face the world and all its challenges and opportunities.
Being okay with not having all the answers.
Embracing the messiness.
Trusting that even small steps towards personal growth
can make a difference.
Create ripples. That's a great way to put it.
It's not about reaching a final destination,
It's a constant process.
of understanding and adapting.
So to wrap up our deep dive into Juka's thoughts,
On Finnish Independence Day,
it's a powerful message.
it reminds us that real independence,
Isn't about building walls or hiding away.
it's about finding that strength within
To connect with the world.
in a way that feels authentic.
And meaningful.
Who knows?
Maybe that's the secret to happiness.
As individuals and as a global community.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We hope exploring Juka's ideas has given you some new perspectives.
Maybe even inspired you.
To start your own journey of personal growth and discovery,